The movie opens as a girl approaches popular author Olivia Perkin for an autograph. The author graciously accepts the praise and signs the girl's book with a smile. As the girl leaves, Olivia's boyfriend Kyle arrives after a long work meeting. Their anniversary is only a few months away, and she excitedly reveals a plan for a romantic getaway to the Haven Islands. But instead of joy, Kyle reveals that he wants to break up. Shocked, Olivia tries to reason with him, but he maintains it's the best decision for them both. A month after the nasty breakup, Olivia attends a video conference with her publisher. She reassures the publisher that she's working on the outline for the next novel, but she cannot show her progress because, in reality, she hasn't written a single sentence. Her manager reminds Olivia of the pressure to deliver the season's biggest book release. With a firm nudge, a new, non-negotiable deadline of 10 days is then set. Cornered but determined, Olivia swallows her pride and promises to deliver. Meanwhile, in the fictional nation of Tarovia, Prince Alexander reads a captivating adventure novel, Lovebound. He's inspired by the author, Olivia Perkins, and longs for a break from his royal routine. However, his butler Winston reveals a packed schedule of official engagements, including dinners, speeches, official visits, and lastly, a grand ball in their palace. The butler then hands him a letter from Dr. Lee, who runs a marine life conservatory in the Haven Islands. Curious, Alexander opens the letter and sees an invitation to a fundraiser on the Haven Islands Marine Reserve facility. Winston informs him that the date for the fundraiser clashes with the royal ball. Suddenly, Queen Patricia enters the chamber. She tells him that she saw the Lady of Renshaw Palace, Catherine, at breakfast. Trying to arrange a marriage between her son and the lady, she invited Catherine to the palace ball later that week. Alexander is not happy about this, as he does not want to marry Catherine. But despite his lack of enthusiasm, the queen believes Catherine is the perfect match for him. Out of the blue, Alexander hatches a plan to escape from Catherine. He informs his mother that the ball clashes with his appearance at a fundraiser on the Haven Islands. The queen is angry that she was not informed of this, but Alexander insists that an absence from the fundraiser will mean bad PR for him. Finally, the queen agrees to let him go, but warns him not to waste time on personal fantasies. In the next scene, Olivia browses the shelves of a New York bookstore and notices her own book, Lovebound. Prince Alexander is also in the same store, and the two collide, sending the books tumbling. He apologizes profusely and helps her gather the books. Noticing Lovebound in her hands, Alexander comments how much he loves the book. The prince feels like he's seen the girl somewhere, but Olivia, unaware of his identity, thanks him and walks away. As she leaves, Alexander notices her photo on the book's cover and realizes she is the author he just praised. But it's too late, as Olivia is already lost among the crowd of New York. Back in her apartment, as Olivia is spending some time alone, she hears a loud knock on the door. Upon opening it, she finds her friend Katie, who has come with takeaway food. The two then talk about her recent breakup and writer's block. Suddenly, Katie notices a brochure for Haven Island placed on the table. She points out that the vacation may help her friend overcome the writer's block. Olivia considers the idea and agrees to go to the Haven Islands for a week-long trip. Following this, the two friends arrive at their resort room on the beautiful tropical island. Katie immediately heads for the pool, while Olivia focuses on work. But feeling uninspired for the novel, she too decides to take a break and go for a walk along the beach. A few moments later, she spots her ex, Kyle, with a girl in the same resort. She dives into the nearest bushes to avoid being seen. Suddenly, the charming stranger from the bookstore greets her from behind. He introduces himself as Alexander and asks if everything is okay. Slightly embarrassed, Olivia lies about the situation and says she was simply admiring the plants. Alexander asks if she's looking for inspiration for her new book and apologizes for not recognizing her earlier in New York. Just then, Kyle and his new girlfriend Tiffany join the scene. The ex-boyfriend explains how he met Tiffany 3 months earlier at a business meeting. On the other hand, Olivia is baffled by Kyle's behavior. When they were together, he never agreed to go for a vacation and was always busy at work. But suddenly, he decides to pop up in the same resort she's staying in with his new girlfriend. Later by the pool, Olivia rants about Kyle cheating on her. However, Katie is more interested in the new man she was talking to earlier. That evening, Alexander visits the island's marine laboratory and feels incredibly proud as he examines the place. At that moment, Winston arrives and informs him that Dr. Lee won't be able to attend the fundraiser event. Alexander knows that it is the only way the lab makes money, so he decides to host it himself. But he is slightly worried about having to write a speech for the event. In the next scene, Alexander and Winston encounter Olivia and Katie during their morning walk. Olivia asks if the two men are on vacation together. Trying to hide his real identity, the prince says that they're here as part-time consultants for the Marine Reserve fundraiser. He then offers to show the two ladies the numerous facilities in the resort. Seeing a chance to mix up with handsome, interesting men, Katie immediately agrees. Olivia initially turns down the offer, but on Katie's request, she agrees to come. After securing a sort of double date, the two men go their separate ways happily. As they walk towards their rooms, we see Ridley, Queen Patricia's security head, spying on the prince. He then calls the queen and informs there is no cause for concern as of now. The next morning, Olivia and Katie arrive at the beach for a tour of the resort facilities. The prince, on the other hand, is planning something slightly more adventurous. Soon, they are kayaking out on the open sea. Alexander tries to teach Olivia how to use a paddle, but she hilariously falls into the water. Feeling slightly embarrassed, she then pushes Alexander into the water, and both of them share a laugh. Afterwards, Tiffany invites Olivia and Alexander for a game of volleyball. Kyle interrupts and informs his new girlfriend that Olivia isn't too fond of sports. Offended at the suggestion, she readily joins the game and drags the prince along with her. And after some impressive moves, they eventually manage to win the game. Irritated at the sight of his ex-girlfriend celebrating with another man, Kyle immediately walks off, leaving a confused Tiffany behind. After lunch, Alexander and Olivia go out for a walk by the beach. Unbeknownst to them, Ridley is relaying all this information to the queen, who asks him to find out more about this mystery girl. Meanwhile, the prince opens up about his personal life. Mother doesn't appreciate his interest in marine ecology, while his late father strongly believed in saving the environment. Hence, whenever he doubts himself, Alexander visits the island, which gives him mental strength. On the other hand, Olivia reveals her recent struggles to find a good opening for her new book. Worried about the fast-approaching deadline, she confesses that all the adventures in her previous books were simply made up. Alexander is quite impressed with her creativity and reassures her that her fans wouldn't mind waiting for the new book. As he drops her off for the night, the prince invites Olivia to attend the Marine Reserve fundraiser with him. At this point, it's evident that both of them are slowly falling in love. Later, Kylie comes back to the room and finds Olivia writing something on her laptop. The author has finally found the much-needed inspiration to begin her new book. However, they're interrupted by Ridley, who is disguised as a hotel staff. After giving them a bottle of champagne as a gift, he asks their names and leaves. He then reports back to the queen, who finally comes to know about Olivia. Realizing that she comes from a working-class home, the queen asks her security head to separate her son and the common girl. Early next morning, Alexander meets up with Olivia and tells her how much he enjoyed her company. The prince is about to confess his royal identity when Ridley suddenly arrives at the scene. He hands the prince a call from the queen. However, Alexander ignores his request and finally reveals his secret identity to Olivia. He says that he is an actual prince and that he lied to her about his profession. Unfortunately, this upsets Olivia, and she storms away from there, feeling deceived. Back in her room, she tells Katie everything about Alexander's real identity. She explains how he's been lying to her for the past 3 days. However, Katie makes a case for the prince. Maybe he wanted to have a genuine connection with normal people without freaking them out. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by the prince himself, who has come to ask for Olivia's forgiveness. He promises not to keep any secrets from her moving forward. Deciding to forgive him, Olivia asks Alexander to take her to a lunch date. Meanwhile, Ridley is traveling back to Tarovia after finishing his job at the Haven Islands. He calls the Queen, who asks if Alexander is really interested in the common girl. In response, the security head reveals he has never seen the prince this happy before. He then begins to say something about love, but stops himself. Judging by the Queen's reaction, we see that there is something going on between her and Ridley. That afternoon, Olivia and Alexander make their way to the Haven Marine Reserve. Here, he tells her how he's having difficulties with writing the opening speech for the fundraiser, as he's not good with explaining his feelings. After a brief look at the fish in the conservatory, the two go snorkeling. Olivia surprisingly enjoys the underwater experience and offers to help Alexander with his speech. A few hours later, he takes her to a secret spot near a waterfall. Alexander explains how he used to visit this spot with his father before he passed away. Talking about his father's works in environmentalism, he wishes he could do more for the Marine Reserve. Olivia inquires why he cannot follow his passion. In response, he tells her about his mother. The Queen doesn't want him to indulge in personal fantasies, but rather focus on more traditional duties. However, Olivia encourages him to be honest with himself and follow his dreams with courage. On the way back from the waterfall, they stumble into Kyle and his girlfriend, who are having an argument. Just then, Alexander receives a call, leaving behind Olivia and her ex-boyfriend alone. Kyle expresses his regrets about his new relationship and attempts to hug her. But when she flatly refuses his advances, he goes back to his room without a fuss. On the night of the Marine Reserve fundraiser, Alexander, who is dressed in his royal outfit, nervously fiddles around the balcony. He will return to his home country the following day and is worried about how to break this news to his love interest. At the same time, Olivia arrives, looking absolutely stunning in her deep red gown. The two then walk to the fundraiser event where Alexander announces the establishment of a foundation to support the Haven Island Marine Reserve facility. After the gala event, the two dance while also engaging in a conversation. Alexander asks if Olivia could give him a sneak peek into her new novel. Reluctantly, she says it's about an ordinary girl who finds love on a paradise island. She then thanks him for showing her around the island and helping her overcome the writer's block. At this point, the two are deeply in love with each other and are about to share a kiss when Queen Patricia interrupts the moment. After a brief introduction, the Queen asks the two lovebirds to join her for dinner. Before they can make their way to the dinner table, Olivia notices how the Queen keeps touching Ridley's hands. She tells Alexander that there is definitely something romantic between the two. Once the dinner proceeds, the Queen warns her son not to announce lofty projects without her permission. She then starts passing sarcastic remarks about Olivia. Acknowledging that she has never read one of Olivia's books, she points out that they're usually aimed at audiences with lower taste in literature. The Queen then jokingly asks if her new novel contains any royal caricature. Immediately, Olivia replies it doesn't contain anything like that yet, but that may soon change. At the same time, Ridley asks the prince to join the donors of the fundraiser for customary photos. Alexander refuses, but his mother insists that he must attend to the guests. Once the two women are alone, the Queen shows her true nature. She asks Olivia if she's in love with her son. When the latter doesn't answer the question, she takes it as a yes and tells her that it is concerning news. The Queen suggests a common girl doesn't belong in a royal household and never will. Before any more damage can be done, she asks her to walk away without informing Alexander. Hurt and disappointed, Olivia quietly leaves the party before anyone can notice her. Outside the fundraiser hall, Kyle sees Olivia with tears in her eyes. He expresses his concern over her new relationship and says he always knew she was too good for the prince. Admitting his past mistakes, Kyle then apologizes to his ex-girlfriend and tries to patch things up with her. However, she refuses to get back with him and walks away. Once she reaches her room, Olivia explains everything to her friend Katie. The two then pack up their bags and leave the Haven Islands. Just before boarding a boat out of the Isles, Katie sends a text to Winston explaining the situation. The very next morning, Alexander visits his lover's room but finds it empty. Just then, Winston shows him the text message he received from Katie. Alexander knows his mother must have said something mean to Olivia, so he marches straight towards her suite. Soon afterwards, he finds his mother having her breakfast alongside Ridley. Alexander confronts the queen, but she tells him not to be too dramatic. Forbidding him from pursuing a common person, she declares that the royal heritage must be preserved. In response, Alexander opens up about always putting his duties above his happiness. He then points out that the queen is facing a similar predicament. She loves Ridley but cannot pursue him because of her sense of duties. Dumbfounded by this revelation, the queen confesses that her chief of security was kind to her after her husband's demise, but pursuing a romantic life with Ridley would create a scandal in the royal court. Fed up with all the unnecessary protocols, Alexander requests his mother to choose their happiness for once. The next scene takes us to New York, where Olivia is back in her apartment. She then gets back to her work and finishes the draft for her new novel. Unlike her previous books, she gives a sad ending to this novel, where the two main characters do not end up together. Following this, we see Olivia and her manager in a meeting over a video call. The latter gushes all over the plot of the new novel: tropical island, royals, and romance. However, she expresses her concerns about the ending of the story. The readers want the two main characters to end up together in an uplifting, affirming story. But Olivia counters her by pointing out that fairy tale endings are not always possible. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupts the meeting. Olivia answers to find Alexander along with Katie and Winston at her doorsteps. The prince confesses his love for her and refuses to go away without her. Surprisingly, the queen has also come to New York along with her lover Ridley. Her Majesty thanks the author for showing her that antiquated ideas shouldn't hinder the happiness of one's family. She then gives Olivia and Alexander her blessings before leaving for a romantic lunch of her own. The movie ends with Alexander and Olivia sharing a kiss, as the manager, who is listening to the entire conversation, asks Olivia to add a happy ending to her story.